Hi, I'm Kirk Hanson, Executive Director of the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University. With me is Hank Shea, for more than 20 years a federal prosecutor who has put many corporate executives and members of boards of directors in jail. And Hank now is affiliated with University of St. Thomas in Minnesota and the University of Arizona Law School. Hank, I'd like to probe what'll keep boards of directors out of trouble. And for the individual director who serves on a board, from your experience, what is it that would prevent them from getting in a situation where they'd come into the crosshairs of you and other prosecutors?
Kirk, let me just talk about this from two perspectives. The big picture perspective is, if I was a board member, I want to be confident that my organization was clearly communicating with me and my fellow members on everything that was material to that organization's existence. The first step is to have the type of working relationship with the CEO and the other senior executives of that organization that are going to be able to have the board exercise a monitoring, auditing, compliance protocol on an ongoing basis.
And I've heard you say it's not just good relations with the CEO and the CFO and maybe the general counsel, but it's also opportunity to listen to the murmur of what goes on in the rest of the organization.
I think the best boards on a periodic basis go out into the field. When you go to the plant, you go to the customer sales center, you don't just meet in the corporate executive boardroom, so you have a chance to talk to those mid-level managers and to get a feel for what is being reported at the top line is actually working its way through the organization. The second thing that board members have to do is be sure that the written policies are more than just the bare minimum of compliance. There are regulatory requirements and legal requirements that obviously must be met by all organizations, whether you're focused on Sarbanes-Oxley or whether you're focused on the sentencing guidelines that apply to organizations. Those are the floor. Boards, responsible boards, need to be concerned with more than just the minimum. They need to be talking about aspirations. What does the organization stand for? What is the organization going to ultimately be known as promulgating, fostering, protecting? Exhibit 1, how do you deal with dissent? You might think board members leave that to management alone. If they do so at some risk, because the board...
This is the person raising a question about some practice, either through the whistleblowing hotline or in a direct conversation.
It can be whistleblowing, but it doesn't need to be whistleblowing. It can be the person who disagrees with a particular course of action. Are there opportunities for that person to be heard? And once they're heard, how are they treated? Particularly for the person who comes forward to report wrongdoing in the organization by the supervisor of that employee or by somebody who is in a position above them. How a board sets the tone in dealing with that at the audit committee level, in dealing with that with the CEO and the senior management, will have widespread ramifications for the success of that organization.
So you don't buy the argument some directors give, hey, creating the culture, that's the CEO's job. That's senior management, that's not us. There's nothing we can do about that?
I don't agree with that. The CEO and executives will play the primary role because they have the management responsibilities and the day-to-day contact of that organization. But the board will, by how they review that CEO's performance and how they set parameters for promoting and rewarding through executive compensation, people whose performances merit it, all have an influence on that. When you talk about tone from the top, it's not just the CEO. It's the people who choose that CEO, supervise that CEO, and evaluate that CEO. And that's the board of directors.
But it's also tone in the middle, because aren't you trying to... I can understand boards being concerned about tone at the top and looking at what the CEO says and does and making sure that he or she's an exemplar of good practices with expense accounts and other things. But it's down in the middle. How does a board take any responsibility for the tone down in the middle of the organization?
Well, they have to do that through the CEO. And I'm not proposing that boards become micromanagers. But what I am proposing is when they evaluate that CEO and they talk about how did the company handle whistleblower complaints, It's more than just how many people called in on the hotline and the helpline.
Mm-hmm.
It's what did you do with those people who came forward courageously and saved the company from a perilous path? Were they more than protected, which the law demands? Were they fostered? Were they acknowledged? Were they even rewarded where appropriate? And that filters down to the middle management level as well. When the board in the audit committee role takes a look at what's the company doing to create a culture where people will want to come forward and do the right thing and not be worried about retaliation, the board will have policies, will have reward mechanisms, will have a series of opportunities to put its imprint on that organization's culture.
Let me ask you about one other possible board responsibility. Discussion in a board presentation you and I made this morning about the role of the board in dealing with minor ethical violations by the CEO himself or herself. Does a board have to come down very hard anytime a CEO does anything with their expense report or some other minor behavior, what we might consider minor?
My answer is yes, because most of the people that I prosecuted for white-collar offenses didn't go out that day to commit a federal felony. It often started with something small. It created a habit. It created a culture, in some cases, of an organization where the minor things became much more major over time. A CEO who is untruthful, even on a minor point, or provides false information on a document, even on a minor point, is a time bomb for that organization. I'm not saying the CEO needs to be dismissed in every such case, but there certainly has to be a very hard look at what caused the misconduct, as minor as it might have seemed, and whether it's something that can be cured or whether or not, in fact, it represents a breach of trust, a loss of confidence in that person. That's what boards have to do, even with their CEOs.
It's great for us to be able to take advantage of your experience on the prosecutorial side, but also seeing companies that didn't come under your purview and what worked there. So thank you.
And there's plenty more of those examples out there. I want to emphasize that the 13, 14 directors I prosecuted are a very small percentage of the people who are doing their jobs diligently, professionally, every day of the year.
A note of optimism. Thank you very much, Hank.
You're welcome.